mission, what's their strategy? Microwave is glaring, fridge begins to hum. Out for domination, oh man, here they
I'll get a little better setup here at the shop.
Cool.
Take a chance, take a chance. Let's go. The machines, they advance. Oh no, all I want is romance.
I just heard myself back, Hal, like 30 seconds after.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Oh, sorry. That was my fault. I think I had the stream on YouTube behind us.
That'll do it. Yeah, it came live.
Never mind.
Smartphone's got a glitch, it's plotting my demise. Laptop's acting twitchy with its glowing eyes. Wired world attacking, can't they let me be? I'm just trying to groove and feel the energy. But I just wanna dance. Clap, clap, take a chance, take a chance. Don't stop, the machines they advance. Oh no, all I want is romance. Whoa. Makes us screaming, stop the beat. Roomba spinning under my feet. TV growls and starts to fight. Man, these robots ruin date night. Power lines are buzzing, neon starts to flash, circuit boards are frying. There's no time to crash, so keep on moving. Yeah, we'll keep it tight, dancing in rebellion through this robo fright.
Now, maybe. Okay, Instagram is going live right now. Excellent. Substack is up. Almost. Come on, load, you crazy thing.
Robots in the kitchen, see them eyeing me.
Cool. Okay. Should be getting close. Okay, hit that like, share the show, everybody. Be up in just a couple of seconds.
Out for domination, oh man, here they come. But I just wanna dance. Ooh yeah, take a chance, take a chance. Let's go. The machines they advance. Oh no, all I want is romance.
Oh, yeah. All right. First of all, let me jump right in here and say hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Also, say hi to the chat. And then I've got to see also if, does this button still work? Let's see. John. Hey, look at that. There's Rob Glenn coming into the show.
Hello.
Good morning, everybody. It's Friday morning. It's a crazy, crazy week. Trump is wandering around museums saying that they teach too much history and not enough future. I got to say, I think this all started with Bravo, or actually, I blame VH1, Video Hits One, which is supposed to be the classic rock and classic music video channel, turning into like an all reality format that got more extreme, chased by Bravo, and then the History Channel with its bullshit current stories. History is made every day. No, it isn't. The past is made every day. It's made every second because every second passes. That doesn't make it historical. And you certainly, the chances of you statistically being there when it happens, slim to none. Especially if you're a film crew on a fishing boat. That said, unless they actually find Moby Dick and he's been alive this whole time. So I think, there's a pop culture root in a lot of these problems with him wandering around like a complete cretin. We'll get to, we deal with the future here. Okay. There's a reason why I mean, the theme of like if there's a Trump library, my theory is Rob Glenn from Root Design in Chicago, who's a great friend and who's coming at us live from either his kill room or a section of his studio. I've been watching a lot of Law and Order Criminal Intent lately. That's what happens when I'm under my desk. I have an iPad on the side just playing Pulp Fiction so that I can deal with all the wiring. I think if you go to the Trump Museum, if they ever actually make a Trump library, presidential library, underneath it, like the subheading is going to be all the things you're doomed to repeat, right?
Unless it's like actively trying to repeat them, I think.
Yeah, well, everything's a reboot with this motherfucker anyways. But on top of that, like, these are all things that were, you know, like, if you don't get that, like, you'll get trapped in a cycle. I think one of the reasons, by the way, and this is a total aside, and I'm curious your take on it, but I'm one of those people who believes that a lot of people think if you don't learn the past, you're doomed to repeat it. And that actually comes from we're not out of it yet. That people think that historical changes are a much shorter arc. Like Nixon, the lesson of Nixon was set and done around 1976. Like we put a pin in that with all the president's men, when in reality, it was a symptom of a greater corruption that you have to be a constant gardener against. Does that make sense?
Well, you could argue that the Nixon thing never got resolved because he resigned.
Yes, you could. Yes, I was being kind. But yeah.
Well, but like that's sort of how a lot of things have happened maybe since Nixon, where there wasn't really any, I'll call it resolution or consequence or for a lot of things. Like Iran-Contra didn't really end up being much. 9/11, you know, the WMD stuff, like there was no real, for the housing crisis, like we just sort of plastered over those things and moved on.
Right.
And maybe,
okay,
like, it's a continuation of like no consequences. We can do whatever we want because really there's not
such a great example. Right. Such a great example. Okay. I have been really on this kick lately about how there's no partisan issues, only partisan solutions. And I would add an addendum to that, which is not all problems have multiple solutions or enough to make them partisan, where there's enough variability. And there's a small black cat trying to crawl his way under my door, and it's so adorable. You probably hear the crackling in the background. It's literally, it's like a tiny little horror movie. So the solutions, there may be a solution, but it's not arguable. It's not a matter of opinion, or there won't be a right wing or a left wing solution to this. The only solution to water in an area like overflowing riverbanks is a breakwater. Whether you build it with sandbags over time and then build a permanent one is what enters into the political down the line. But in the current thing, the water's on its way. We can't remove the house and move the river, so we got to sandbag the porch. Like those kind of things. And that's not, I would say, even an emergency situation like CPR or something, but a short prep time dealing with an issue, right? And then once you go, okay, if it happens again, maybe this is a cycle. Maybe this is something we have to work on. And then it gets into the argument about how much of a problem it actually is, how much it'll happen. That's where we get into climate change. We get into resource management. We get into oil and gas and renewables and all that kind of stuff. That's where that comes from. But the problem itself, that whatever vehicle you're in is going to need some form of power to make it go someplace, whether it's your fucking feet, like Fred Flintstone, or a solar panel that is high density enough to charge a battery on such a trickle that the car can keep rolling at a reasonable speed forever, right? This is the window, right? That's still those are still solutions to the same problem, right? And the Republicans right now have really dug into this Fred Flintstone shit. And I think a lot of us are trying to argue for what I would call a Star Trek future. Whereas and I leave Star Wars out, even though Mark Hamill's been making a lot of great headway lately, because there's a difference between Star Trek and Star Wars in terms of their the Star Wars is the past and Star Trek is the future, for the record. On the time scale, it was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So presumably the people in the Star Wars universe have learned their fucking lesson by now and are not all up in their dad's ass in a universe of fratricide and patricide, right? Which is really the theme of that whole thing, ultimately. Can you ever kill your dad? It's like Oedipus's universe. But the future Star Trek is like, maybe we wear uniforms on the deck, but we have regular clothes on the side. We've got replicators, AKA 3D printers and fabricators that can give you most, if not all, of what you want, depending on how well they do it. Nobody really has a job. People have careers and work because they're driven to do things, and everybody's relatively healthy all the time because of scientific advancement that do not rely on whether there's a doctor on board at all. That kind of stuff. Like, that's the way I think a lot of us want this to go. We could see a future where that's possible, right? And the Republicans, I guess maybe it's a Luddite streak, maybe it's the Amish in them. No, it's no offense to the Amish, but or any kind of like orthodox, neo-biblical, neo-Quran, neo-Talmud or Hadith kind of idea about women and gays. Like, that's what they want to lock on. They're actually the Andrew Tates of the world and all that kind of stuff show their affinity for that past. Not just that their inability to leave it, but they actually yearn for it. And we'll get to AI and all this stuff, but I'd like your thoughts on the idea that there are no partisan issues, only partisan solutions, and that and that some cases there can be no difference of opinion in the solution because that's the limit of technology right now, our ability to even do anything about it. It's not arguable.
Yeah. So first off, I'm not in a dungeon. I'm at my shop. A lot of people are mentioning they said I was detained by ICE, I guess.
Right.
They
all think you're Canadian because you're so nice.
Yeah. So the front of the shop, there's like a couple of little offices, and we spend all our time working in the back. So I haven't done anything here yet, but it'll come. We're trying to make it a little bit better, so when I'm here, that it kind of looks like a studio. And we've been working hard on our stuff, and it's going well. You bring up, I'll kind of back up a second. And so in my industry, like, we develop new products, and there's a tendency to call products like the solution to a problem. So like a lot of like the way that companies
entrepreneurship is described as such, right? Find a problem and be the solution.
Yeah, so many, yeah, exactly. New businesses, they're solving a problem, right? And that's a term that, while it's used a lot, I like to not use it because these aren't actually problems. Like, Uber doesn't solve a problem. It just does something that people want to do a different way, right? Right. I'll use Uber for a second. Like, the genius of Uber is probably that the app allows you to see where the car is. So if you have to wait 5 minutes for the Uber, because you can see it on the phone, it feels like a better time. Like, you don't get anxious or whatever. If you're waiting for a taxi for 5 minutes and you don't know where any taxis are, you're just looking, and a taxi comes 5 minutes later, it's going to feel like a lot longer, right?
Yeah.
So Uber didn't solve a problem. They just did it different, right? So when it comes to,
it solved a lot of little problems instead of one big one, like a little, not even problems.
That's the point. They're not really problems.
Yeah, they're consumer needs or consumer wants. I would prefer this, right?
Yeah, so that would be in the realm of more like behavioral psychology, right? Like, it just feels different, so I'm going to use
algorithmical psychology, right?
Maybe, yeah. So when it comes to politics that in the terms of what you're saying, like solving for a solution, like we're just living, right? And so CPR is, yeah, it's an acute problem. You're trying to get somebody stable. And so there are like very specific techniques over time that we've learned that if you do these things, you can hopefully stabilize somebody for a period of time to get them to the hospital or the EMT or whatever the next step is, right? When we're talking like making laws, that's about long-term future. And once you start trying to come up with solutions that are long-term, all we're arguing about is like various like tiny differences in how you go about doing it. There's really no difference between Medicare for all and the private or the public option and whatever. Like there's very little differences in the options that we had when the ACH came out.
Right.
I mean, there were differences, but at the end of the day, we needed more people to be able to have access to healthcare, right? So the problem was people couldn't afford healthcare. I guess that's actually a problem.
Right.
And then the solutions are, how do you make that possible?
Yeah.
And so,
well, there's also, if I may,
there's nothing political about. Like everybody needs to afford healthcare is the point.
Yes.
So like, that's not political.
Right. Yes, everybody's got it. Like everybody who's ill or in danger or like physically in danger of losing their life to a disease or has been injured, any of those kind of things needs healthcare. That's the problem. How you get it to them is the solution, right? The delivery, because it's really a question of delivery and existence. So that's the thing I would put in as an addendum to what you're saying is that a lot of the times, like in tech, they talk about minimum viable product, the product that you can make right now, not your pie in the sky idea what the iPhone should be, eventually, but what will move us in that direction and what will give the consumer enough to buy it, test it out for us, see if they like it, see what they want more of, and then we can move in that direction because the options are infinite. I mean, I'll give you an example.
Well, minimum viable product though is actually about economics, not about the product itself. Because you don't want to invest, you don't want to invest money in something that'll fail. So what they're trying to do is de-risk.
Yes, that's right, exactly. And they're de-risking by R&Ding through the public by here's what we got, this is what we can accomplish within our realm of our design concept, our own artistry, our own thought about this thing, the available technology that we have. How can we put those things together and make the consumer like it? And then as best we can right now, so that we're on a path to improving it and getting the person to go, okay, I trust this thing. And as it gets better, I'm going to use this so that there's like a coordination between the consumer's needs and wants and what you're actually making. So they don't go, oh, this guy makes a round cell phone and it actually fits in a jeans pocket a lot better. I don't know why they didn't make them just round like a compact, like it fits in the hand better instead of squeezing it square. There's something organic about it. Those kind of things like that could happen. There's no reason why cell phones, smartphones have to be rectangular. Honestly, ultimately, the best reason for it currently is turning it sideways so you can watch a movie on it in 16:9, which almost no one does. So that's the irony of it. The visual aspect of having it, thinner than it is tall is about the comfort of the hand, the measurement of the thumb to finger ratio of holding something in the hand. That's what has defined it. Whether it's round or a hexagonal or any of that other shit it's a mirror. You could make it anything as long as it fits that general zone. And so technology itself,
rectangle, the rectangle is a yield thing. So if you have a big piece of glass, and you cut out a bunch of little screens on that piece of glass. If they're round, you're going to waste a lot of glass. Whereas if they're rectangle, you get almost perfect yield.
That's right.
So that's a yield problem.
But again, you could solve for that if it was a superior thing and people went for it, because it would be worth the expense of glass. So
but the cell phone becomes cheaper because it's riding along with TVs and it's riding along with all things that have displays.
Right.
So you want to use the things that are sort of already there.
Hence,
so that the volume allows for
this business.
lower cost.
Okay, so you know me and my robot fetish. But go ahead, finish your thought. Yeah, jump in there. And
no, I actually don't see the stream on.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes, let me give.
I only see you in the green screen.
Gotcha. I'll fix that. Hold on. Dink. How about that?
There we go. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been on just the two for before. So up until now, I just left this out. So this is the figure one robot running the Helix system, and it is completely autonomous right now. This is not one of those situations like Elon Musk where someone is wearing a virtual reality headset and hand grips and teaching the motion to the thing. Presumably they've gone through that and they've gone through a simulation. I think the current thing is like 10,000 iterations, which sounds a lot like the Buddhist 10,000 lifetimes argument, which is again why people should read the Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra. And it basically explains that like old Buddhist monks were right about the future. It's just a matter of timing. A package separator in this situation is supposed to flatten the bags out so that they don't bunch up when they go through the packing machine, like the forwarding machine, whatever the part of it is. It's got to be kind of tapped down, and the label has to be facing down. And they give them a variance of colors. They have different textures in them. Some of them have a lot of them have clothing in them or cloth, but a bunch of them also have like hard items in a bag. A lot of the stuff you'd get in an Amazon envelope. That's what they're testing on. And then occasionally a box will come through, or two of them will be stacked together. You'll also see this thing touch things and try to tap it forward and get an idea of, there we go. Grab that thing. Grab it, man. Ah, damn it. He's lost for a second. There he goes. Now he got it over. It's like, I'm getting backed up because stop trying to be neat and clean about it. Then he catches on, fixes it. Like, this video is an uninterrupted hour long. This is Figure One put this out a month ago, I want to say. This is
maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah, 2 months ago. Yeah. So, but this is where they were 2 months ago, which in AI terms is a lifetime. And they just ran this as an iteration. Now they've got, I think, 8 or 10 of these things running on a similar line, doing testing. And this goes to your whole, like, take what's possible, available in the current environment, and modify it with the minimum viable product. Now, at some point, will there be a giant 8 or 10 tentacled robot with tiny little grippers on it that can do this way more efficiently than a bipedal humanoid with hands? Of course. But our brains aren't built to create how an octopus would work, right? Octopi. We can't necessarily work that out for ourselves yet, and we've got to do the harm reduction and all that kind of stuff that goes with robots. So we're going to build people or little R2D2 bump in Roomba things for the foreseeable future until we either get, brain implants that allow us to run Doc-Ock like arms and we're comfortable with it, which is a long way down the line, or AI creates the robots for you or something like that, which is not that far away. But I want to be clear. This is the future of labor. Whether it's on the time scale that people think of 8 to 10 years or whether it's 2 years away, doesn't quite matter. It is an inevitability. Period.
Yes. So the amazing, when you say like making it human-like, it's sort of forwards and backwards compatible, which gives you redundancy. So let's say you put the robot in there and it doesn't work. The robot is doing a human task, the same task a human could do.
Yeah.
So if it stops working, you just take the robot out and put the human in, and you haven't lost the function, right?
Right.
So it's inevitable that a lot of tasks might even be done in a less efficient way. Like, why would you don't need to build the octopus because it's sort of a single purpose thing, when you can build a thing which is multi-purpose and then have it learn the task of doing. So with the multi-purpose object, you have higher volume, You can build off of things you learned in the past. Like not as many things are new when you start doing it.
Right.
So then this is like very, this was a breakthrough, like it was a couple months ago. I remember sending you a link to this video.
Yep.
When I first
we just didn't get to talk about it on air.
Yeah. And it's, the recognition of effectively like these objects, which are all unique. And every once in a while you see a box come in. So like the soft versus the hard. Also, it's full of things like anything from clothes to maybe something that's a little, like could be a little more breakable. Like
right.
You have to grab a package, but then there's something inside of the package. And so it's a hard problem. And
yes,
they're
it is.
doing it there. Like they're doing it.
Well,
it's
and so
amazing.
this is 10 days ago. So this guy comes up and he pours a bunch of towels on the table and he goes, "Can you fold these towels for me and put them in that basket?" After seeing it deal with the bags and run simulations like crazy, and people are like, "This is really slow. It would be aggravating." First of all, this is one of the first iterations of it, and it can work forever. So the idea that it's slower than a human is immaterial, especially in a job like at a hotel where this has to happen all the time at all hours. You could just set 4 or 5 of these things on doing this, and that's your laundry department at the hotel, right?
Yeah. So when we think about products in general, like things, they get cheaper as you make more. That's just the way it is in a capitalist
all
society,
technology
right?
is deflationary. I have said it and I will stick to it. That's a Hal Sparks megafesto Sparksism.
So one of the things that we run into in the work that we do, the engineering work especially, is that we're so used to time being a component of these things, meaning I have to go faster. Like the only way to make this product viable is to make it cheaper, and thus the only way to make it cheaper is make more. And there's only so much time in the day, so I have to go faster, right?
Right.
When you automate, one of my arguments is that time stops mattering because you can just increase the number of parallel tasks, and it will. And so if you can do the same thing slower, like let's say 3D printing, it's a single box and it makes a single thing at a time, right? Now that's way slower than an injection molding machine, which can pop these things out like one every minute, let's say, just to argue. Well, if you make 60 a minute or 60 an hour, excuse me, on the injection molding machine, obviously a 3D printer can't keep up until you have 60 machines that make 1 part an hour. Now all of a sudden it's the same, right? So 60 3D printers versus 1 injection molding machine is technically the same thing. And if you can then allow that thing to not need inner input, like a lot of, let's say in manufacturing, a lot of things only run while an operator is there, like a person is there.
Right.
But if you automate, that no longer happens. So an 8-hour day versus a 24-hour day of it being automated is also completely different math. So my point is like you have to change your paradigm of thinking as you move into this realm.
Right. Let me add on to that, which I think is a little addition to the time factor, which is, think about if you were making an iPhone or whatever, you would have to make you'd have to go, okay, this phone has to be, our date to deliver is this date in the future. And this has to be a thing that a certain number of them could be made in 8-hour work days.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're going, okay, we can have this many available to market because the components and the elements to put them together can only be built during an 8-hour workday, unless we have 2 factories that have a night shift and a day shift, right? That's what happens.
There's shift work. Yeah,
that's what Foxconn. That's one of the reasons why Chinese labor ultimately, it wasn't really about the lax labor rules on top of low wages also meant that they could run people 24 hours a day in the same factory, and they just have shift work going all the time, right? It would just never stop. Whereas car companies in the 70s, like, and if you watch Slapshot or something, they, 9 a.m. to 5, and then they're done, right? No cars are made that night or into the night or whatever. There's no need for it. So the other thing is that that injection molding analogy that you make is, if you want to make a change in the product, even a minuscule one, you have to create a new mold.
Or modify it, which is really fun.
Yeah, you'd have to, if you'd have to either change out the mold or have a different one. Let's say they're a major issue. Oh my God, this little thing keeps breaking off. It's a choking hazard on this thing, and we had to fix it in the design. You'd have to tear out all your injection molders and for that change. Whereas if it was a 3D printer, you just send the new file. That's done. So that's one of the other upsides as far as that time.
Then there's the made on demand, as opposed to ordering quantity and then hoping to sell them. That's a big change as well. And a lot of waste, a lot of plastic waste actually comes from the things that are made that never get sold.
Right.
We think about consuming and then throwing away, but there's a lot of waste just in not getting the numbers right, or the thing gets made and it's not popular, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. Or there's one element of the change you made. You coked your way into a problem, right? So,
right, exactly.
Right. This is also, I think this is a Korean robot. Alex, which they call All X, I think is what they're kind of messing around with, like kind of playing with the English aspect of it. And this is one of those that won't have currently. I don't know if it has legs, but it won't matter, because it can just roam around on the floor in your house like a Roomba or on wheels. But it's got arms, and the purpose of this whole thing is to train the arms and the eyes to be able to do laundry and clean counters and put dishes away and that kind of stuff. Okay, so is this going to be in houses by the end of the year? There'll be pilot ones, and they'll deliver them. And I'm going to show you the Neo Gamma next, because the guy who does all the AI, I don't know, these big summits or whatever, who's bullshitting his way into the AI world, I forget his name. He kind of hosts all these things because he's already rich, so he pays for these things. They go and get all the AI guys to like wow people like MBS, shit like that in the audience, and they get have big screens and show off where the future is going and try to get investment in this, whatever. But he bought one of the Neo Gammas, and it's going to be in his house by the end of the year. They're giving him, one of the early prototypes of it. These are the flex fingers, so you can show that they're plasticky or whatever. And this one is designed to work in and around human beings. And they have cute little things like unafraid of touch interaction. What will Alex do next? Whatever. This is their little thing. It's cute. So this is We Robotics. I'm going to try to pause this so you don't end up meet Alex. Yeah. So I'm not playing them. It's just music in the background on these things, whatever. But it's basically it doesn't have legs currently because it's meant to work in limited capacity. But what you were talking about in terms of, think of the robots that do car and automation in a car plant are big giant arms, and you reprogram them for one purpose, but they don't go anywhere. But to adapt one of those to a new format is a big deal. They have to retask it and all that kind of stuff, and it has limitations in what it can do. And I mean, most of them are pretty incredible, but the point is, look at this guy right here. They have this thing disassembling and reassembling this piece of I guess this cooling unit or whatever. And the hands,
it looks like Jordy's headset.
Yes, yeah, it did. He's fixing Jordy's headset. So the hand, and this is interesting, so South Korea came up with this guy, and it can grip you, but you can take your hand away. That they show this whole thing off. It's got grip strength where it can lift something, but its sensors are such that if it's holding on to like a human or anything fleshy, it has to let go if you try to get away or whatever, and its fingers can bend back. But it can, if it's holding just metal, it can detect it so it can lift heavy things. That's the thing. They would work. Now again, this thing you could park. Maybe it will be in a household by the end of the year. No, but will it be in hotels in South Korea by the spring? Abso-fucking-lutely. It will be sous chefing. It will be they'll roll it in when they have a plumbing issue in the bathroom, and they'll have one of these that's keyed to any toilet issue you have or whatever. It can disassemble the toilet and put it back together. So you roll this fucker in and go smoke outside, and then you come back and get him when he's fixed it. But look at the dexterity of this Allen wrench situation. All you IKEA carpenters are about to be put out of fucking business. The point I'm trying to make is like what you're talking about in terms of the scale of the scale of what you're talking about as far as adaptability and what is coming is a crucial part of this conversation that I don't think we're having on the Democratic side of the aisle about the politics of labor and the politics of unions.
Absolutely.
And all that stuff. Because if the cost of labor goes to zero, the cost of work goes to zero, labor itself, unless it is a labor of choice, a labor of love, you whittle handmade furniture, you make things that robots currently can't make yet or fabricate yet, that will have value. But a bunch of jobs, if you can lose a thumb at work, that job's going away. Let's start there. If you can hit your thumb with a hammer or saw it off or cut it on the stuff you're touching all the time, those jobs are going away. And so we need to
deal with that.
Yes, we do. So,
and I think AI is like the way it's kind of happening. I think that's like a pretest, because
right,
mind work, like white collar mind work, is like not as direct as people standing in a factory making stuff, or somebody somebody physically doing a thing. But it's coming after the mind work first.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully that we get ahead. We have to start getting ahead of it. And it seems like as a function of, or speaking about it as a function of how it affects labor, I think is probably the most direct way to come at it.
Right.
Because it just touches everything. It touches like people understand basically, job gone. How do I buy groceries? Right.
Yeah. Well, and again, the first thing that's going to go, and this is the thing, this is where you have to actually prep for it, where we're not going to fall into this accidentally. And that's a great example, because if you lose your job, how are you going to pay for groceries? Well, groceries, the process of grocerifying your grocery store, picking the food, putting, like insecticide or weeding the farm itself, the gathering of it, the packaging of it, all that is on the automation chopping block first. Sure. So by the time you lose your job doing something that it hasn't quite figured out, like the only way to do this is that you have to manage all the things that people mostly spend their money on a daily, not necessarily like cell phones, which you might buy, over the course of a year, every other year. There's no real rush. Ultimately, they're going to do it, but there's no real rush to automate that process. But picking fruit and ultimately dressing a pig or a cow carcass and pulling, cutting it into steaks and processing meat and chicken and eggs, especially gathering eggs. That's one of the primary. That is why, 100% why. Every robot you see them testing, they show it lifting an egg out of a carton and putting it in a little thing for the fridge or whatever to show that it can work in the home. But in reality, what they're talking about is chicken processing plants. They're going to put these things in there and they're going to pick the eggs, because eggs are one of those things you can't just put a scooper on an automated robot thing and just grab it, because it will crack, it will break. So you need a gripper that is sensitive to the pressure, because it changes with every egg. And then they're going to have little, scanners on them to see if they're, a healthy egg or if it's got a abnormality. And then it'll have a little, which a human could never do unless they're wearing some sort of big head apparatus, which would make their neck hurt, which would add all kinds of legal and union issues to, I wore this thing for 20 years. Now I can't turn my head. I've got Batman syndrome, right? That will be built into it. So by the time, if you care enough, this is what you would do. So here's my question for genius that you are, 99 creator of the 99% rule, engineer Rob Glenn, is how do we engineer for this future?
Yeah, so I actually think you can't. You have to think of this as a behavioral problem.
Mhm.
Like if it's a problem, it's about talking. It's about how we talk about it. Like
Mhm.
like the the system that we live under of trading, I guess you'd say, work for money and then money for goods,
Yeah.
or services, goods and services.
Mhm.
Um, it 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 works because of marketing. Like you choose what you choose based on marketing, right? So
Right.
uh, and if you want to like modify behavior, behavior takes a long time for people to change, right?
Mhm.
So we have to be better at understanding how to
That's
uh,
why we're here.
implement things
Right.
in a way where we modify behavior, not outcomes, if that makes
Right.
any sense. I would argue that most of politics right now is not about policy at all. It's about feelings and behavior, right?
Mhm.
Because it's not connected. Like things that are happening are not connected to reality, like data and reality, right? They're connected to feelings and behavior.
Right.
Um, and I think that if we tackle these problems from the standpoint of that's how we get through it. And so, one way to like you're starting to talk about with food, right? So
Yeah.
how if food is if the creation of food or the growing and the picking and the supply chain of food, if you will, that's grown, harvested,
Yeah.
meat packing, whatever, if that's automated, then then the logic is the price would come down. But in our current environment, the price is going to continue to go up. So what we have to
Right.
tackle is the cost per, like the actual cost versus the margin of the cost versus the price you pay, which is the margin, right? So like dealing with the margin of things has to change. And uh, so if something's free to make effectively, then it should be free to buy, but that's not going to happen. It's just going to increase the margin of the product.
Right.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the types of things we have to tackle. And right now, as we start to talk about those things, it automatically goes to you're a socialist, you're a communist. And like we can't, like it's very difficult to have a conversation about anything without it going there.
Well,
Right?
okay, I can. Let me do an attempt to break that pattern and stop that right there, because socialism and communism are based on the sharing of labor and the control of labor and the means of production by the society as such. But the issue here is that this is wholly different. There is no socialism or communism or even capitalism when the cost of labor is zero and it is not done by human or animal effort, where the animal itself can die of natural causes over a period of time, like a donkey or an ox pulling a plow, or the human being has a limited lifespan and a limited window of physical availability where they can stand at a line and work until their back breaks and they can no longer make stovepipes and shit like that. That's the realm of where socialism and communism live. They are in that. Socialism and communism ultimately are about the productivity window of humanity and how to maximize it while, in theory anyways, minimizing the damage to the pre-productivity things, so you don't lose a hand before you get to the point where we need you to have two hands. And then after you're done, we don't cast you aside. So we don't have society going, what the fuck am I standing at this line for? If as soon as I'm done and I can't work anymore, you guys are just going to kill me anyways. Right. Which has been the problem with communism as it's introduced in China or in Russia over time as well. But this is actually not beyond a conversation about the economics of anything. And that's kind of, it's a post-labor economic model. And socialism, capitalism would be, I think what most people think of capitalism is resource capitalism, oil, gas, gold. You're sitting on a pile of it. And then secondarily, you built this building with money you had before. And if I want to live someplace, I have to get in that building that you own because you have the resource I need, namely shelter. Well, if building stuff goes to zero again, and single family homes and, and modification of office structures into livable spaces becomes relatively cheap in the next 10 years, that goes to zero. The value of being a real estate developer goes to, you'll have a 10% margin over other people, but everybody will basically be zeroed out. Labor, if automation of labor is a metaphysical, an existential attack on socialism, capitalism, and communism in terms of anything about labor. And since capitalism isn't entirely about labor, there will be a market system that will survive. People will trade stuff they don't need for stuff they do need. That's capitalism in a form. It just may not do it through a fiat currency or something, but that's still the same fucking thing. A swap meet is capitalism. It's just this matters more to me than that does to you. That matters more to me than this does. So let's trade. That's market capitalism. But communism and socialism are about people's productivity window and what happens to them after they're done being productive, if anything at all, and how much they are owed in moral theory by society for the labor they have put forth. Well, if nobody's doing any fucking labor, and most of the stuff is smart labor, and even that is going, that's what you're talking about, the like white collar kind of conceptual engineering. Most of these robots will be trained in an AI environment, and it's happening so fucking fast that even calling out socialism and communism is a fucking joke because it doesn't match the circumstance. It's like, do you have communism on the space station because everybody has a different nozzle for the toilet, but they all use the same one, and nobody can buy their food from somebody else on the space station, because everybody's got assigned allotments of food because you're in fucking space. Like, that's not the same thing. The VA isn't socialism. It's literally a perk of joining the army. So if you're willing to get killed, we'll also offer this patch up service. That's what it comes from. It's not for it to be socialism, it would have to apply to everybody, and it doesn't. It's a job perk, right? Because you might die because of the nature of the job itself. That's what the VA is, not socialism. And so it's outside the conversation of this. Socialism and communism are fucking, especially communism, are fucking meaningless when the means of production and the proletariat are all digital.
Yeah, and at some point in time, there's so-called investment into AI, right? But so many investments are subsidized by tax dollars already.
Yep.
Drugs. That's a big problem.
Yeah.
In prescription drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where our tax dollars fund the development, and then private companies take the profits, right? There's not really a great mechanism to deal with that, and the intellectual property, because it sort of doesn't fit within the same IP of like other things that don't take as much upfront effort, right?
Yeah.
But if you go to China, one of the reasons China's manufacturing has been able to become what it is because they treat capital differently. The government basically sets up the factory. Like, the government effectively funds things that are capital intensive,
Right.
So when you don't need the upfront cash to do the thing, then or that sort of magically appears, right?
Yeah.
Then they sell the product to other countries like the US, and the US prices it as if it's relative to their way of making it, which is go buy a tool, go set up a factory, right?
Yeah.
So you're basically like you're playing by two different sets of rules, right? So when things, as you say, when labor changes and things change, it's as if the value proposition actually becomes like more human contact. Like I would argue that
yes, okay,
who
yes,
who delivers the thing is more important than what the thing is.
absolutely.
Or who your
so
human
many,
interaction of like talking, entertainment, that sort of thing,
right?
that actually becomes the thing of value.
Yeah, exactly. The things that anything a machine can't do, which is human interaction, it immediately becomes that much more important. So the idea that they're going to have like salespeople, that's why it's weird when in Japan or China they create these like hostess robots or whatever. Like that's exactly the job you don't need to get rid of. As a matter of fact, that will be a sought after job because that's where people will effectively tip attractive, interesting, fun people to be around, you know, maitre d's and the like, and hotel people, because we give you the human touch. You just watch. Fuck, there'll be hotels like Motel 6 is going to be automated out the ass. But if you go to a high-end hotel, they're going to go, we give you the human touch. And that's what you're paying for with your credits, your crypto, your dollars, whatever it is. So, fuck, I like that. Okay. So, there's so much to this. The first thing I've been saying lately, and I think this is kind of crucial, is that if you hate your job, the physicalness of it, not just showing up and doing it and the kind of nihilistic anti-work kind of hipster bullshit that we see all the time, but if you fucking hate the job or you go, this is stupid, why am I doing this? If you've had a complaint about, why are we all doing this job? Someone else could do this. One person could do this fucking job, and we all keep nearly losing a fingernail in this machine. That's going first. Those are the first jobs that are going to go, period. Then anything that's dangerous, poisonous, toxic, that'll go first. Then the loneliness epidemic. So this is the two goalposts of why you're seeing all these like humanoid robots that walk around and do your dishes, because there are a lot of estranged grandparents and people with shitty uncles and friends, or people who've been abused and don't trust humans and live alone, kind of isolating themselves from the world, that this will be their first toe back into having another living thing besides a pet in the house. And I think it's probably going to be 2029 before we see our first crazy robot lady, who's like living like JF Sebastian with a bunch of humanoid robots going, good evening, JF. And bumping into the walls to make her amused. These are my friends. I make them, right? The other goalpost is people who live alone, who are disabled, need help, are elderly, don't have any family left, aren't great at making friends, or neurodivergent, like 100 other reasons why you could have a robot in your house, or you're busy as fuck and you don't want to have to do your own food prep for dinner and laundry. I'll cook the food because I know how to cook it, but you can chop the vegetables and prep all the things. Here's the recipe, be my sous chef. And then the little guy rolls out of the fucking pantry and starts chopping vegetables, and, or more than likely he won't even use the knives or whatever. He'll have a little like Cuisinart addition and he'll go, out, clunk, thud, right? That'll be your whatever. That's the two goalposts I see. Hyper automation, mining, automation that could in jobs that could lose your thumb or that break people's backs or make their eyes go bad. And then nerdy first adopters like you and I, mixed with people who are willing to pilot a robot in their house because they're alone and they don't have any help and they don't want to go to a home.
Yeah. And honestly, in terms of the second one, which is effectively like it's an appliance, right?
Right.
If you go to your kitchen for a second and look at the appliances, and let's take like a blender and one of those KitchenAid like food processors with all the gadgets that cut and mix and do all those things. Effectively, what those things are like single purpose objects that decrease the time it takes you to chop things up in a different way, blend them, combine them, separate them, whatever the task is, they're all individual products. The reason they exist is because you could do them by hand, but it's faster and more regular to do them with the machine. Well, if you took all of those things and replaced them with the hands of a robot that could just do that, then really you're actually replacing all the stuff in your kitchen with two pairs of hands attached to a robot, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
And so a lot of times we think of these things as like, if we're adding another thing on top of all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times what AI and robotics is doing is it's actually completely replacing whole swaths of current like ways of doing things.
Yeah.
So then once that thing gets replaced, it's kind of like, you know, how electric cars might eventually replace gas cars. They just do because those are the things being made and the other ones aren't, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know, to like mandate certain things in electric cars, I think is a little weird. If you could just start rolling out products that people ended up buying, you get to the same place eventually because people end up buying the thing that's just a better thing, right?
Yes.
And so much of the way that things have gone, the way that stuff like that goes is like people try to like think of what might happen when they project forward all the things that they think might happen instead of just letting things happen and adjust for them as they happen, if that makes any sense.
Well, that would go to the engineering issue of labor specifically, is because the reason we've done that in the past, the reason we ultimately set up FEMA is because responding from scratch to an emergency takes so much more fucking work than being ready for it ahead of time. That I would argue that it should have been called I don't know, GERA, like the Governmental Emergency Readiness Agency, as opposed to management, because you're not managing an emergency. That's a stupid fucking word. You're ready and responsible, you know, responsive to the emergency itself. It's about the readiness part. And we do have a couple of questions in the chat. One was about DeepMind's new Genie program that turns videos into video games, and the other one was companies that produce all the things we love in our kitchen will go out of business. No, I will argue that they will be adaptable to these live-in robots, so you can cook and use them, and the robot can as well.
Yes.
So what will effectively be, you know how R2 rolls up and turns off all the trash compactors in the detention level because he has this little appendage that sticks out and makes him join with that thing? There'll be an equivalent. It won't even be that complicated. You can do it with an RFID exchange in the robot's fingertip, or Wi-Fi wise. It could be your robot could be Wi-Fi hooked to your Internet of Things in this thing, and it'll work manually if you push the buttons on it. But it also has a Wi-Fi version of it where the robot can just go blend, and it does, right. I don't know why my robot does like Jack Benny blend. Oh, Rochester, like at some point. Right.
Well, it's the difference between something that's of necessity, you must have it to survive, and something that's just of, you know, you use this because it's more enjoyable than the alternative. And so, you know, yeah, no, I'm not suggesting that all those things will go away. What I'm suggesting is that there's like different value propositions that happen when you stack these technologies on top of each other, and that complexity is what we're not really thinking about as we move forward. Like, there's this sort of like, we must switch to electric cars, and maybe that kept us from allowing hybrids to become more of a product, because we like, why didn't we invest in hybrids over electric cars? Hybrids would have gotten us there faster.
Right. That's
probably.
the ACA approach.
And they probably would have been more acceptable than all electric in the US because of everybody's range anxiety, right? So if you have a hybrid car with an electric engine, it's got a gas tank in it, and you just never use the gas because you don't drive enough, that's okay.
Yes.
you basically have a fully electric car, right?
Right.
So what, like if the market would have let that happen, we would ended up in a different place. And
how about
again,
this?
I'm not like a
It's so
market
great.
guy, but
No, but you're absolutely right. And there is one element of, you could have done this, like if California had done electric or hybrid by 2030, as opposed to just electric, and made that transition that way, which gave everybody an option. Probably by the time it came around, they would have bought a full electric because it's 2030.
maybe.
Right?
Yes.
If you're in the realm of buying a car, you might buy, if you need one right now, and then you see yourself buying a car, and then before 2030, you might go, well, they're not going to be enough charging stations, and I don't know how long these things, like you'll buy it, but you would go, a hybrid's fine because I know I can always get gas. But as they slowly, over time, if people start leaning that way, gas is less necessary. Gas stations will start shutting down, and that kind of stuff, because it won't be as necessary, or they'll be converting half of them to charging stations. So the next round of people will buy an all electric. So by setting that hybrid standard by 2030, the market itself and the public, and I think in the way you're like changing minds about this, would eventually by 2030 more than likely buy an all electric car, because the technology is improving all the time, and that's just the way things are going. So it's a brilliant point.
Because it was more available and it just made sense. So like, and it's easier to convince somebody. Let's say you had a hybrid and you go for a year or 2 or 3 and you're like, wow, I'm not really spending much money on gas. Then the next time you buy a car, maybe you're like, well, I've never, like, when's the last time I've been to a gas station? I
Right.
don't do that hard. So yeah, I could get away with an electric car, and then you would have been there, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to go back and say we did it wrong necessarily. I mean, it could have been done better. But when we think about the future of these new things, robotics, AI, I think that's a really good example of how like projecting forward, especially with our human, like we want to humanize it, we want to make it Terminator, we want to be scared about it. We don't want to be scared about it. We just are scared about it. That causes us to think differently about the solutions than if you approach it with, as it comes, right? So, like outside, like really for a normal person, the development of AI, like what's it doing? Like how is it affecting you, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying it's not. I'm not being flippant about it. I'm actually asking the question. Like, ask yourself, where have I interfaced with this AI thing that everybody tells me is, going to take over the world and is destroying the ozone, or sorry, the climate and all this other stuff, right? Like, do we feel the electric grid not being able to handle it? We actually don't yet, except maybe in Texas, but that's that's a problem they have with funding of it. But they're projecting forward the electric grid not working, because they keep saying
because their electric grid in the past has not worked even under the normal load, because they're separate from us.
Exactly. And they're like, we're thinking about this thing growing into this other thing that may or may not happen. And when it does, it's going to blow up into this huge thing, and we're not going to be ready for it.
Well, and part of this is the Trump effect, because these guys all moved to Texas, which has a grid separate from the United States. So they're projecting the needs of Texas onto the lower 48, the rest of the country, and Alaska and Hawaii, as if we would have the same grid problem that they will have in Texas. So their acute problem in that state, which is unique to Texas, is not necessarily what AI draw would be across the country, or even what it will be in Silicon Valley in California, and Trump making this thing. They're having brownouts and stuff. They have not. California is not having brownouts on the regular, but Texas has had the most like grid problems that we have seen, specifically because they are kind of an island, in terms of electricity and stuff. And they also want to build on that, I suppose. They want nuclear power plants, right?
They've been building up their use of it through trying to get companies to come down there more and more. So they're effectively like increasing the pull, like the use of it is increasing, because they're trying to get companies to come down and use it essentially. So when I say behavioral, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how you go about it. So Dragon Rider 1350 said, challenge with electric vehicles is for people who live in apartments and high rises where they can't easily have it charging while at home. So I would argue that the solution for people who live in apartments and high rises is effectively getting solved by some things like Uber, like the shared car situation. So,
Right.
and that's a behavioral change, right? And a lot of times people own a car and that live in a city because they think about that the couple of times that they go out to see their parents or their family or their so and so, 200 miles away.
Yeah.
So they base the decision of buying a car on that maybe trip that happens twice a year, as
Right.
opposed to the everyday going back and forth to work, right?
Yes.
So if their everyday is solved by an Uber or a Waymo or a shared vehicle, or all these things that we keep kind of hearing, this like people buy electric cars and then they're automated and then they just go off on their own during the day, and people pay you to have your car. It's not in the garage, it's being used, right? There's all these like ideas. But my point is that
that's more city and
like,
apartment based, right?
So of course there's differences, and a lot of what the US is, I'm just sort of sticking on this electric car thing because it's a good analogy, I think, for this.
Yes.
A lot of range anxiety actually comes from rural America, not from cities. And
Right.
so the solution for rural America is different than the solution is
because
even
let's say, okay, and that's a great example. So solving the rural range anxiety issue solves for 300 miles or more. The average person in a city drives the same 9 miles every day. And if you have a battery that can last 300 miles, you can charge at work if you have to drive there, or at a, do a 1 hour, speed charge at one of those stops, every other week or something, just like you do with gas, right? You don't get gas at home either. The question is battery durability, lifespan, and range. And if you can solve for that for the rural area, the city problem takes care of itself because most city drivers don't even use that amount. And if they do, they can prep for it like anybody does for a long car drive. We're all supposed to check our tire pressure before we go on a long car drive, according to the manual that comes with it and the old driving movies. We just don't, because we take it for granted is all. So in the apartment situation, I think that's a great point as far as charging goes. But the only thing you run into is if you don't leave your house for, days on end, in which case, back to your issue, which is your solution, which is, do you really need a car in the first place? Can't you just rent one for when you do and Uber the rest of the time, and the cost will be lower than car maintenance and insurance?
Yes. So moving forward, the last thing you want to do is tell anybody in America or anywhere really, you can't have a car because you live in a city.
Right.
You are not allowed to have a car because you live in a city. Instead, the way you have to handle this issue is by allowing the behavior to catch up to the reality, right? And that's actually what these things are doing. That's what rideshare is doing. That's what the shared cars are. I'm thinking like Zipcar, or there's like shared bikes in cities. There's all kinds of these solutions, and they kind of work themselves out. So the solution to your original question, I think it's behavioral, and I think it's starting to stop talking about things in binary ways. Instead, and this actually comes also in the political realm as well, where we need to stop thinking about everything binary and start thinking about it. Well, sometimes it's this and other times it's that, right? And actually be a little bit more nuanced with this stuff.
Yes.
And so I think those two things, think about these things behaviorally instead of like forcing things down like by policy. And then second, think about things with nuance, or we need to start talking about things in more nuance than binary, so that happens. And the way you see this happening, I think, is we're kind of going through fits and spurts of growing pains with this. But I talk about like the reason Trump gets away with the stuff he gets away with is because he says everything. So it doesn't matter what happens. he's already said all the different versions of the solution, and
Yeah.
whichever happens, he'll be like, well, yeah, I said that, right? And it frustrates everybody. So now
Yeah.
we see like Gavin Newsom starting to talk like Trump,
Yes.
and it's almost like freaking people out. Like they're like, well, he can't do that. He shouldn't be doing that. It's like,
Right.
why not? Like, why shouldn't he be on a podcast with Steve Bannon? Why
Right.
shouldn't he? Why shouldn't he have a conversation with, anybody? It's just a conversation. It doesn't mean that's going to change his way of thinking.
Well, and
or
also like
his
we got so, and this
choice.
goes to my jargon problem because people worry more about how things are said than what is being said. So much so
Right,
that,
exactly.
and this goes to our partisan solution thing, and I want to bring it back to in this conversation. By the way,
Yeah,
Rob Glenn,
I
Root
hope
Design.
this is connecting back to that.
Yeah, it's a lot of connective tissue and the like for everybody, but it's super important because I feel like we have to start moving towards where we can articulate a pathway forward. You know how they're always saying like we shouldn't just run against Trump, we have to be for something. Well, this is one of those areas where as Democrats and as people who care about labor and care about the average person, we can start prepping for a future and offer solutions and an implementation plot that will help. Like again, this I would argue is an emergency. It is emerging and no one is prepared for it. And preparing for that emergency is something adults do when they give a shit about the lives of the people around them. So in this case, this is going to impact the labor market and the creative process and the design process and all this stuff, like and a lot faster time scale than people thought before. Now we've had previous time scales, agriculture, implementation of agricultural technology has had a huge drastic change in like the number of human beings working on farms. We tend to think in very 1935 terms, even in terms of immigrants picking things in farms. And if you'll notice that most of the time you used to see, they would show them in groves, orange pickers in Florida, apple pickers, stuff like that, olives, other things like that, where the plants are relatively tall. That's almost gone. Right now, they've automated either like with their little nets where they shake the trees as they go by and they just fall into the net and then the net pours it into a thing and there's a couple of humans around, but it's a wholly different experience. Most of the stuff is the back breaking work, the lower plants, because the machines are too big for this delicate thing that they're picking. So, or they have to pull stuff from the ground. And right now it's not quite good enough to be able to understand the tension of not destroying the thing or stripping it as it comes out of the ground. So people are pulling lettuce and kale and stuff out of the ground and putting it in bushels still. That's going to go away too, but that's where it is currently. We as people think of immigrants as like you go to the grocery, everything you see there is provided to you by an immigrant, right? Or by a farm worker. That used to be true in 1925. Now, over time, all of that stuff through processing and other elements, increasingly, it's more like an 80-20 rule. 20% of the things you see in your grocery are harvested by a person. And even right now, the 20% is a large portion of it. A lot of it's the produce, specifically the raw produce, and which makes a big pile of stuff in one part of the store, but it's a lot less food than the packaged stuff in the freezer. It's a lot less food than the packaged stuff in the aisles. So this difference, who the immigrants, who's doing this work and the backbreaking work and the fact that you can't get Americans to do it. They do the jobs Americans won't do. Well, I mentioned this before. When the tractor was introduced, let me see if I can show you this real quick. I made an infographic using AI to try and show what this was doing. But to explain my point about the institution of tractors and the availability of them and like how that started. Essentially, we're about right here, the introduction, they start showing up right around here. Around 1950, though, zip, like it totally changed. This trajectory, levels off to the point where 41% of the reduction of farmers, like workforce in farming, paved the way for new industrial and service economies to absorb that labor. 41% in 1900, 2% workforce share in the year 2000. compared to the
So
number
the
of
percentage is how many people, how much is done by a person, you're saying?
yes.
I see.
So this is the workforce in the country, the
Get it.
American workforce in 1900, the American workforce, 41% of people worked on farms, picking, harvesting,
Oh, okay.
plowing, that kind of stuff. And in the year 2000, it was 2%. But the productivity, the availability, if I had a cross graph here, which I didn't have time to do, has gone up, like the cost of food itself compared to what you take home, all that kind of stuff has gone down immeasurably, even as groceries are more expensive and people focus on that. The variety and the amount of stuff and where it comes from and the quality and the safety and just the availability and the preservation of it, all that kind of stuff has gone up immensely in the same time period, almost at a crisscross. As this went down, the amount of food available to the average human has gone up, for better or worse. Make of it what you will, but that's been the case. And that's before robotics and AI. That's just tractors and shredders and spraying, I guess like crop dusting and that kind of stuff as it was introduced right around here, right? That's before you've got like robot pickers and lasers zapping weeds, which is all now being introduced. My point is, this has gone from 41% to 2% in 2000. And by the idea that it would go from 2% to zero, or a statistically unimportant number like 0.00075% by 2030 is a clear part of this. It's likely, I would say.
Likely, that's better, yeah.
It is
so,
likely.
For your graphic, you need to take that tractor, delete it, and put a person there.
That's true.
Like
sorry.
Icon of a person.
Yeah.
It looks like tractors went from. So that's my advice from the graphic.
Well, it's partly the availability. I think it was my focus when I was talking to it about tractors, because again, the Operation Wetback, the Eisenhower thing, was about removing people who were previously pulling plows, namely Mexican men who did the hard physical labor, because they were replaced by a tractor. Automation and mechanics replaced these people. That's why the lazy Mexican stereotype came out, because these guys were out of work. If you went to these places where months earlier they had been pulling a plow and their strong backs had necessity and the like, they were now sitting there waiting for something else to do. And they were becoming a scourge, as far as, the American populace and the people around them. The women stayed, the men left, right? Then you've got like, down in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. Okay, do you think that song came out of the vapor? You think it just, it's about time? No, it's true. And the reason you could is because the men she came with left. She was lonely too. That's how you got a shot, dummy. Because the men had been broomed. That's how that happened. That's a cultural impact song, right? That's I don't think people recognize that, that creativity is based on experience. And that experience, you could tell a lot about history, about the kind of songs that are being written and how they're being written, either the intention of the people or the direct experience, right? So this was the other part of this, which was it's called the ATM paradox, which is ATMs, when they were introduced, we all use ATMs all the time now. And you used to have to go to a bank teller. And the thing was, ATMs are going to put all the bank tellers out of business, right? That didn't happen. As a matter of fact, there's been a modest growth in tellers over the same period of time. ATMs went through the fucking roof. This is the dark blue line is ATMs in the US in thousands. The light blue is bank tellers. They have overtaken them in 2010, but not by much. And the growth of tellers is just kind of ticked up alongside of it. And it hasn't been a detrimental change. You haven't seen like a number where they tipped to the point where the blue line, as soon as this line goes up, the tellers go down. That's what you would say if automation was having an impact in these situations. And that is because of that human interaction element. This is my money. I don't want to put it. It looks like a shredder. I don't want to, every time I put my checks in the thing to put my checks in the ATM, it looks like a fucking shredder because it works on the same mechanism just without the blades. And it makes me fucking nervous, right? So I want to hand this check to a person. That's why. That's that human interaction part.
Yeah, and the death of the teller won't be ATMs. It's going to be from digital transferring of money.
Yes.
It's going to be from not needing the physical cash anymore. That's what it'll be. I just, because I think it connects. Last Life Crisis said earlier, the AI bubble is starting to burst. Most investors are realizing it's just being used for brain rot videos and not worth the investment. So this is the black and white thing. So yes, it seems as if the bubble's starting to burst. The bubble should have never been there to begin with. And I think that's the binary problem that we have. So, I think it was like 2 weeks ago that we last talked. Like the behavioral rollout, the marketing rollout of AI, I would argue is the worst rollout of any product in human history.
Sure, but it's partly based on ignorance. Horrible. Yeah, but it's also
So if you were to say that like Steve Jobs was the greatest marketer of a product ever, like or in our lifetime, let's say, and then you were to compare how Steve Jobs or Apple rolled out the iPhone versus how Sam Altman rolled out ChatGPT or OpenAI. Sure. They are binary. One is like high level, the other is like kindergarten. Right. Anyway, so the AI bubble, like it's what I'm talking about. Like, how do we solve the problem? We stopped talking about AI in binary terms. Yes. Originally, they came out and they said, it is the smartest human ever, AGI. Like, it's ridiculously stupid to call what we are seeing now at all human at all, because it's just not. And by making it human, like you can't measure it because you can't measure a human. And this is like super important that we understand this. Like you can't know if AI is getting better because there's no measure for it, right? They try to come up with them, but nobody understands it, right? So, so by saying that, by making it this thing, it essentially it's probably no different than a meme coin, right? In terms of like investment in it. And in the meantime, to then have it collapse, it's really easy to say, oh, well, it's not actually a thing. Like it wasn't as good as they said it was. Right. But it is very good. It is there's a lot of things that it's doing that's very good. So the solution, I think, is to sort of speak about, if you speak about AI in both good and bad terms, like it's really good at this, it's not good at that. It might help us in this way, it might catch us in this other way. I think that's how we have to navigate this situation. And so, like we're talking about here on this show, it can't take human interaction. It just can't. And people will start seeking that out more if they haven't already done it. I mean, you can see it in younger generations. They spend their money on experiences, not on things. It's showing up in all kinds of economic numbers that younger generations aren't buying goods. They're going to music festivals and they're buying concerts.
They're buying experiences, right? Which is, by the way, what you were buying. That's the thing too. It hasn't changed, because back in the 50s, you were buying that experience. You just had to get there. And part of having that experience was not that, there were music festivals that you could go to, but if you wanted to go see a band play or hang out with your friends, you had to buy a car to do it. And to have that experience of individuating from your parents, of experiencing the things you want to experience, going to see bands you like, going to movies, going on dates, all that, you needed a physical car to do it because there wasn't an alternative, right? You couldn't take the train. It wasn't, there wasn't a subway per se, so you needed those things. And as those things become less necessary, it's like, I always talk about how like I have a bell on my motorcycle that everybody gets that scares off road demons. Like, so everybody attaches one of those. It's a good luck charm or something like that. And I remember stories of my dad, you know, polishing his car with a fucking diaper. And he was really into cars when he was young. And he would, you know, and now it's just you're marveled by it, but you don't really care. You go, oh, this has got nice features. This will do. And the reason is because the old one could kill you. You could die in it, and you had no control over it. You did like you didn't even know if people knew how to drive. Not everybody was licensed. Even if you were, there wasn't a picture on the license. So somebody could get pulled over and it's fucking Ted Bundy. And it just says, you know, Theodore Carvazos. And you're just like, okay, goodbye, Mr. Carvazos. See you in court. Right. And he drives to Florida and kills a bunch of people. Like there were so many things you had no control over. As we have gotten control of those things, we have started taking them for granted. And once you can take those things for granted, then you go down to, well, what am I really doing here? The first principles. I'm trying to go hang out with my friends and have a shared experience that's fun and full of joy and maybe romance and passion and curious and exciting and adrenalizing or whatever. And that's what we're really in this for. The delivery system now is changing. That's all. I can now Uber to that.
Yeah.
Whereas I used to have to make friends with the asshole who had the car if we wanted to go, or hitchhike, which is, again, you're putting serial killers out of business because Uber, you want to talk about like who's gotten the short end of the stick? It's been the Uber drivers. They're the ones who are more in danger of being attacked by their passengers, right? That used to be an occasional story of a hitchhiker that would kill the person that was driving them. And if you haven't seen The Hitcher, which is a great C. Thomas Howell, Rutger Hauer movie, it's fucking brilliant. It's such a good movie, so scary and so well done. But the idea that the hitchhiker would kill the person was, when the fuck does that happen? But the other way around was like the big fear. So people stop hitchhiking because of that thing. Now you can Uber. The chance of your Uber driver doing it is fairly slim because he's on camera, you're on camera, but there's plenty of things tracking you to it. Like, that is gone. So you're not thinking about that anymore. That's not even part of the adrenaline part of it anymore. Yeah, that might have been part of the thing. It's like, oh man, we're going to hitchhike to the beach. Oh shit, right? Which is exciting, even if it's stupid. Yeah. But now you Uber there, when you show up, it's like, it's just the beach. So what? I don't know, shark diving? What are you going to get the adrenaline rush from that was normal to your life when things were more dangerous?
Right. Mark said it wasn't cool to take your date to the movies in a taxi. And to your point, like, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, you could totally either meet the person at the place because you both Ubered there, or if you actually wanted to impress your date, just upgrade the Uber to black car and go pick them up, and they'll actually think that you're thinking of them, right?
Yeah, so, like you got
it's totally
like,
fine.
Oh my God. Like think about the kid in school who hired a limo for his prom date, who could afford to do that. And I went to New Trier.
It's kind of like that.
I went to New Trier. There were like 5 or 10 kids who did that every year because they were rich. And I was not one of them. We took the fucking train if my dad wouldn't let me borrow the car. So we were the kids in Warriors at the end who are getting on after the Warriors have been out all night trying to fight their way back to Coney Island. We were those kids, the other kids, right? Going down, hi, in my blue fucking tuxedo with my frill, with your frilly dicky. But yeah, as those things get answered, and they have by an app on your phone that calls a car, which is fucking insane. And then, the driver makes me nervous. It's too much. I don't trust that person or whatever. I don't want them hearing our conversation. I don't want whatever. So let's get an automated car with no driver at all, right? There are people thinking those are right. And as that goes, then what? And this goes to the existential question overall. And thanks to the chat room for being a part of this today as well, if I may, as I bring you guys in for a second. There you go. There's the chat room. Hi, chat room. Feel free to ask us some questions about this because I think this is crucial. But here's where I think this is going. All backbreaking and dangerous work will be the first on the chopping block, along with any intellectually repetitive, boring, or difficult work as far as interaction with the customer. Anything you can outsource to a chatbot for the dipshit low-paying client that you have that asks way too many questions, or customer that you have, which is what automated phone calls are anyways, right? Press 1 for this, press 2 for that. Hotels are already doing it, even with shittier systems. Upgrading it to an AI chatbot as opposed to, just directing the call would be a welcome, step forward. I did the Crazy Insane Alien said I did that at 17 to 19 hitchhiking across the country, right? You could now, I guess,
yeah,
that's crazy. Wow.
you could practically Uber across the country.
Yeah, right. Even Ubering across the country would, it'd be very expensive and difficult. There are big stretches where you'd like, still it's possible.
Trains for that, maybe, I don't know.
Forrest says the AI driver is always listening, which I think there is a thing about that as well, like privacy in a digital car. And again, I think that's one of the things that turned off after that Chechen story. The idea that somebody like Elon Musk could turn your car off from his desk is a crazy thought as well for most people. That's why I think automated driving is highly overrated. And you're basically making autonomous train cars. Do crabs have eyebrows? No. Dangerous jobs. Wouldn't that mean army or police too? No. I'll tell you why. Because army already has plenty of mechanized shit already, like drones and stuff. The army might be a thing, but that wouldn't be army. That would be like saying, will planes replace men flapping their wings? They'll do the impossible. In terms of police, the police will have robots that they already do. I showed it the other day when we were on, that robot that came in because they had that guy hunkered down, but they're not going to arrest people or do any of that kind of stuff. But what they would do I guess we'll always yet it, because you have rights in our Constitution that will require human intervention at some point. But a robot that rolls in and says in 10 different languages what your rights are, wait for the Miranda bot to show up. Right?
Well, I mean, I think we're going through that. We're going through the fits and starts of like that transition. That I think what we're learning is that police officers are really more social workers than they are military.
Where's your laptop going? You stand up. Right. Sorry. Finish that. Sorry.
I'm just saying that we're in this like moment where politically cops are sort of footballs back and forth, and policing is actually more about social work than it is about coming in guns a-blazing if we thought about policing as a higher percentage of just contact with society, then you would probably get ahead of problems much quicker than waiting for them to blow up and then coming in with an army,
Yeah. But I will say that what's the difference between a human running a targeting system and an armed robot that walks into a place and has targets cleared to take out in a high danger situation with a human in the loop sitting in an armored car outside and a sniper across the street? What's the difference? Effectively, it's just a sniper with legs and they walk the bullet closer because they still have to clear it through a human. They have to get green light to kill the person or take them out or, eliminate the threat, which is what they call it. Right. And so what's the difference? How did you ever hitchhike in Kentucky? No, I didn't. I just fucking walked. So SWAT teams will be put out of business faster than beat cops will, or social workers. And if you want to talk about a defund the police technically thing where we're sending in mental health workers, here's one. Okay. This is for the anti-robots, anti-AI. Oh my God, Terminators are going to kill us all, folks. If you have a situation where you have a person having a mental health breakdown and they are a danger to themselves and others, and you would rather send in a mental health professional and instead of a cop to de-escalate the situation, but you do it a few times and that person gets killed, what you're going to send in with them is a robot that looks pretty innocuous, quite frankly. Looks a little friendly and a little silly, like the Neo Gamma or something, a little like harmless, basically. You know, like I'm a physical assistant in case anything needs to be moved, but it also has the ability to fucking shoot you or something. It has a cutting laser built into its forehead, you know, whatever. But it accompanies this person so they can talk the person down, and they don't have a cop in a uniform with all the things that would keep a human being alive in case the person goes on a stabby stab, right? They've got this thing that doesn't have to worry about being stabbed. It can just grab the person, hold them while the social worker runs away. Is that not a better situation than a police officer who, to save their own life and the other person there, because their life is at risk, has to be armed and shoot to kill? Would you rather send in a mental health situation a rather innocuous R2E looking robot and a mental health professional, and the mental health professional is protected by the robot, but it doesn't look like a dude from the cops, you know, who's ready for, you know, who's taught to deal with the threat? You know,
I mean, it might de-escalate it faster if it looked like a kiosk that you could order something from McDonald's before it killed you, right?
Yeah. Well, or the robot in Interstellar, which was basically just a giant silver block. But then when you realize it could fold out its arms into these kind of almost bladey level things, you're like, oh yeah, that could fuck somebody up. Somebody says, Crazy Insane Alien says, send in the sex robots. First of all, they're already here. Believe me, I've got a whole stand-up bit about it. Go watch the last Flapper show. But that's not far off either. None of that human interaction. But and again,
I mean,
there's a thin line between cooking your meals and cooking your meal. Like all they're going to do is take the thing that does dishes and all that other stuff and turn it into an attractive male or female, I suppose, that you could purchase, and you could change their parts and look at random, like, because the Harmony robot that I did jokes about in the fucking 90s or early 2000s, you know, you can change its wig and its face and all that kind of stuff. So there is this is what I think the essence of this is gonna happen. This is happening, all of it, and it's happening on a scale that is faster than what people thought, and yet at the same time, people's interaction with it is so, what I would say, the AI slop part is relatively harmless. It's just another media thing. It's like you're seeing ads and you're like, it's just another way to make ads. It's just another way to, you know, because that's the only part of it you see. And you see a lot of it because it gets a lot of play. But like, you know, I've showed people, like, again, just this alone. Hold on. Just this part. Go ahead. Let me do one thing.
No, go ahead and finish.
Yeah. So this is the company 1X. I've shown this robot before. This is the 1X world model that they created to train their robot in a virtual environment. NVIDIA uses a similar situation, and they run through this thing where they load in all these scenarios, and then they have it run it in a digital environment over and over and over again. They create a virtual world where it practices these things over and over and over again. So it's ready for, you know, its experience by the time it shows up. You can show it what kind of doorknobs you have in the house, and it will only, you know, it'll figure out those in case they're tricky or weird. And I love how they're sitting out in the woods just talking, you know, like, we'll have time for time in nature. We won't have to do all the stupid shit that we do.
By the way, I love the sock that they put around that. I think that's pretty genius. I really do like that. It's soft. It humanizes it, but it's also soft at the same time. I think it's a genius move.
I agree. Because they want one in the house. That's what I was saying, was that these are the guys. That one dude I was talking to you about has has already ordered one, and they've got the 1Xs, the Neo Gammas are in. All the founders and the people who work there, like the vice presidents, there's only like 9 or 10 people, but they all have one in their house basically all the time. And it's just learning. They're part of the R&D because it's a relatively small company compared to other stuff. And I think there's going to be, they've created certain motor drives and stuff that are tendon based that make it softer and more delicate for home use and stuff, which is not servo based, which is where you would use it for industrial uses. And their whole big thing is they don't want it to like raise its hand up, smack somebody and knock their head off, because as the head of the company describes it, when you create a gyro in something to move something forward, there's something moving against it to kind of slow it into space as it creates the weight, right? And so if you don't time that right, or it fails, it can smash something and destroy it, superpower, or if it negates it, it decides to not use the compensatory thing on it. Like twitch motion could be super strong, whereas tendon-based stuff can only be so strong. Yes, it could punch you. Yes, it could hurt, but it won't hurt the way a servo could just punch straight through your head, right? And there's a difference there. Yeah,
there's like a shock absorber in the middle.
That's exactly right. So,
there's the comments. Barefoot Bear said, "Hal and Rob, you're explaining reality and possibilities. What do the billionaires see in AI's future?" I'll answer that, but you might have an opinion, Hal. I think that's kind of what we're trying to talk about when we say when we talk about reality and possibilities. We're kind of trying to talk about what we see out there. I think the quote unquote billionaires, they're essentially trying to fund it because they want to make money off of it, and a lot of money off of it, and also they want to be the people who effectively figure out how to own it, want to be the gatekeepers, in kind of in the same way that they're using essentially the model, which I would call old now, of Apple's App Store. So they want effectively OpenAI's model is they want, anytime you ask an AI to do something, they want it to flow through their servers. And then they're effectively the cloud. They're the cloud. It's the same as Amazon.
Yeah, they'll be the toll booth operator of AI.
And the infrastructure, the owners of the infrastructure, so that you can monetize the actual transfer of information, the conversation, whatever that is, monetize it in some way. And I think what we're trying to articulate is that it may not be possible to monetize this thing, because the reality of what its stated goal is actually to unmonetize, right?
Yes.
So
that's why this is a first. That's why this is a unique time in history, because why
the bubble is forming as well. Like, we're starting to see the beginnings of a promise where the delivery didn't hit the promise, and the thing is still really good. The problem is the promise was way more than the actual thing, even though the thing is good. So it doesn't matter because everybody speculated on what it would be. So it's still going to be a product, and there's still going to be people that run servers that do it and all this other stuff. It's like connecting the reality with the money effectively.
That's right.
And we have to maintain that connectivity, or else, it's going to.
Let me tell you something. Like, in reality, whether these guys believe it or not, want it or not, know it or not, they are effectively techno-communists. And the technocrats, and when I say techno-communist, what I mean is that this isn't about people anymore. This is about machines doing the labor. Any engineering feat you want done will not be done with a human there that you have to pay to do something. So one of the things that they want to eliminate is in the delivery of products to the people, they want to eliminate the cost of labor. Now, in the United States, by outsourcing our factories to China, and you and I have talked about this before, Rob, but when the jobs that are going to go first are the outsourced ones. Any job that was sent to a cheap labor factory anywhere else, whether it was China, Vietnam, initially Japan a long time ago, or where they were hyper efficient in Japan. Remember, that was the big thing about Japanese efficiency. That's what gung ho was largely about, was that they don't bitch and they keep working and their stuff is really good. Okay. That was all about lowering the cost of versus quality index of those things. That's what these guys care about first and foremost. They're not thinking about the long-term implementations. I think in most cases, I think most of the robot companies are looking at labor support for an aging populace and a demographically shrinking human population that will also switch over at some point to we're going to have to build things humans can't build because we physically can't stand it. We can't do it. We can't be close to the thing long enough to build in this environment. So we're going to have to create robots that will build these things, whether it's in space or wherever else. And eventually that's where it's going. So let's just start going there now. So we can be the one that people go, oh yeah, you can always trust a Neo to, you know, when you're building your space station, these things never fail, whatever, that kind of thing. That's the way they're thinking. And it's an old way of thinking, but it's still a way of thinking. The rest of them who are talking about kind of the AI aspect of this are, I think they're not aware of the change they are teeing up. I don't think intellectually they're like, I think they have moments where they're grasping this shit, where they go, oh, fuck. Well, if nobody works, nobody's got money, and everything's free, basically. What the fuck do I sell to these people? How do I make, what's my life mean? Right. It's the same existential. Yes. It's right.
They're like, you're effectively just, you're investing in a stock. It could be anything. It doesn't matter if it's AI or if it's a meme coin or if it's oil. It doesn't matter.
Same AI existential problem, whether you're a billionaire or you're an auto worker, because the result is the same. You are like, again, I got news for you. In the startup world, if at some point the cost of labor goes to zero, if you can create a digital board of directors, if you can create a business, register it, get it licensed to do things, fill out all the forms digitally. You don't have to hire staff to do that. You don't need a venture capitalist to give you their fucking money anymore. So then what? How do they even get a part of this? Whoops. Like either Rob is challenging me to a fight or he froze for a second. That's the hard part. Are you there, Rob? Can you see me? It might take a moment. Maybe it's just brain farting. While he might have to reconnect. Give me a second. I'll go to this. Yeah, he's reconnecting. So give me a second. I want to show you something here. This business. See if you can color. There he is. Oh yeah. There you go, Rob. Hold on one second. I'll bring you back in, if you would. Let's see. Back to the. I was about to show something. Hi. I don't know. You froze for a second. Yeah. So I want to, let's see if I can show this thing. Here we go. Okay. Here's where we're headed. No matter what anybody does. And that's the crucial thing. It's not about if, it's about when. And the when used to be a manageable distance away. Think of this as the climate crisis of labor. And I'm the Greta Thunberg of labor costs.
Yeah. I hate even that because I don't even like how the climate crisis worked out, right?
I know, that's what I mean. Like, I'm just kidding. I'm being facetious, but how dare you? So I think she did more damage to the climate movement than she ever did in helping. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
But all right.
One of the reasons I use the electric car thing is that because like it could have been handled in a completely different way, which wasn't so direct. And
if we don't get everything, if we don't get everything, nobody gets anything was the methodology for the movement. Because if you treat a crisis like an emergency, which is different, right? Then you create a false impression on how fast the solution has to happen and if it's even possible. So you can create nihilism by making it like, you know, the don't look up asteroid thing. Like, you know, if I can't do anything about it, that's like just a question of human mortality. We're all going to die of something. So why ruminate on it? Don't look up. That's what that means. It was an analogy about death, not necessarily the climate crisis. And there's some people who are so fixated on the end of life and trying to extend it that they drive themselves mad. And other people are completely happy having a melancholy at dinner party when the planets collide. This is not just a picking and processing robot, but it plants them in these internal growth pods in environments where it would otherwise be impossible. So in trying to create a way like how would we grow plants in space, we can also grow them here in the Mojave Desert. And you could do it in a way that doesn't harm the wildlife if there is any at all. The rattlesnakes will not mind. They just won't have to dig holes. They'll just go underneath the the like whatever I guess shipping containers that they put all these things in. That okay. So they go through this. This is a hydroponic tech farming thing. This is a device that solar powered, runs around, and I think this is the laser zapping one. I have to check, but this one sprays fertilizer on stuff and then does insecticide. Ascarta. That's the one that lasers them. So it knows what plants are supposed to be growing, and any plant that isn't identified as the right plant, it will either crush it or zap it. It will burn the leaves off of it so it can't germinate, and it will smash. There it goes. That's what it sees. Right there we go. Okay, this is the future of strawberries. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm telling you, it's not a question of if, it's a when. Once you do this, what the fuck does the cost of a great strawberry if you don't need land to do it? If you can stack facilities, you could have a high rise. This, we were talking at one point about converting some high rises that were used for work into hydroponic facilities for growing. Then this is the other thing. Okay, so this is a milking cow. How's AI working on this guy? Okay, they all have a tag on their ear, and they also all have a sensor on it that checks when they're feeding if their udders are full. When its udders are full, the gates open that allows it to walk. When it's time to walk back into the barn, that will take it to the milking side, so that they can milk it instead of somebody having to check all the time. Which I feel sad for that pervy dude who worked his whole life. This guy. So they have to when they need to be fed and whether the feed is working. That geofencing, geo sheepdogging. That's what these drones are doing. This whole by 2050 the population is going to go up by 2 billion is nonsense. That's not true at all. But the productivity around it is going to operate as if hydroponic city growing. Arizona and New Mexico and next is Nevada. I think there's even one downtown here that has just shipping containers with these hydroponic farms in it, growing kale and all kinds of shit. That's going to be the future of farming because it's perfect conditions. You could just do it over and over and over again. You don't have to worry about ruining the soil someplace because you manufacture the soil that it grows in and you provide it the nutrients and the water that's in there. This is what's coming. So one of the big reasons, this is why this is, Eisenhower 2.0, that Trump's whole thing about getting the immigrants out and all this kind of stuff was in Eisenhower's time, it was reactive to the tractor showing up. Now it's proactive because these guys we're talking about, these billionaires, while everybody's talking about AI slop and shit like that, they are building the systems that will provide the food for everyone. So if anybody's getting paid, it's not going to be a farmer in a field in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be the folks running these things in major cities. And you will have organic, nearby food grown in town in a former business high rise. And that's who your grocer will be. You'll get it right out of the bottom floor. The retail will be on the bottom floor. You want fresh produce? You'll go to the building. Just like you go to a farmer's market in the middle of rural America. Poof. That's where the money's coming. And while everybody's focused on AI slop and chatbots and whether somebody's going to fall in love, all these fucking clickbait stories about AI, this is what's really happening. Not that guy, but this stuff is really happening. That's how AI is going to affect your life. This is where the changes are coming. This is, and again, this is where they're doing it in pilot programs in Africa to increase, yields in areas where people are starving for smart farming. There they are in China. They've got water sensors and all this kind of stuff in the food. Processing it, getting it. That's just the reality. So what I'm saying is that
yes,
we have been so focused on can AI sing and dance? Can robots juggle or beat people at chess or do fucking tumbling exercises or dance? That we're missing where the business actually is happening. people will need to eat no matter what they do, even if they're facing an existential crisis. What will I do now that my job has been taken away? They got to eat. They're going to need clothes. They're going to like, and they're going to need something to pass the time, whether it's a sex robot or an amusement park or an immersion experience or a VR headset or something where they can pretend to have a life or actually have one. They're going to need those things. And
yeah. Paul Young says everything will be local, and I absolutely agree with that. I
yes,
think what's happening is things are becoming more localized, and technology is allowing sort of, it's actually the unwinding of globalization in a sense.
mhm,
And the unwinding of globalization has more to do with resiliency and with uh, like necessity, right? Because
mhm,
you can't make a necessity 7,000 miles away, because what happens if the boat sinks, right? Or what happens
mhm,
if you run out of gas, right? So the point I'm trying to make um, we like, as we sort of think about these problems and we start to plan for the future,
yeah,
I firmly believe that uh, the movement forward is localize,
yes,
decrease supply chains, and then figure out how to deal with what you have after you've done that, right? So
yeah,
that's the exercise. Is if I can't get the piece of clothing from China, what will I wear?
yeah,
If I can't get this from there, what will I do? And
mhm,
if you think about that as a problem, then we can start to solve for those problems. And that's what people will do in the future. They'll
yes,
be doing those things more locally. Like we need to, one of the things that's happening is, what they call trade schools. Like we need to start doing stuff with our hands more, because the innovation will come not top down, but bottom up. If we
yes,
start actually trying to like figure out how we're going to solve the little problems one at a time, then that's where the innovation comes from.
mhm. Well, okay. So I'm gonna write a Substack up on this and post it about how I think um, this should, our sort of path forward should go. That creates kind of like a tier step, and there are goods and services that should be primary to replacement through automation and AI, and
Right.
stuff that can wait, and stuff that will never be replaced because the human touch is too important. So whereas you might have pedestrian pop music and EDM being created, like DJs shit created digitally and nobody will care, written music will still have value because you will insist on the human touch beyond even knowing whether it is or not. So that'll be key. But there were a couple of points in here. CSL said also critical is it will recreate local farms out of the past, maximum freshness. That's absolutely true. In the cities, that's one of the things you missed out on.
Yes.
And a farmer's market is a special thing to almost like liberal cities. That will become completely normal. And No Carrier says, let's add permaculture by ripping out lawns and growing food forests as well. It won't be necessary. I would argue that you will take a building that nobody uses anymore, a former government facility, something like that, convert that into an interior farm where you could just have parks. The pastoral part of permaculture.
That's happening. That's already in Chicago. There's already indoor, like older on the south and central side of the city, where they're taking warehouses that used to be something else and they're turning they grow produce for the restaurants in the city.
That's right.
That's already happening.
Yeah, and Ellen says China's polluted all their land with chemicals. That is true. Their soil is like only about 14% of their arable farmland is usable now. It's fucking terrifying. So they're having to do this. And invention being, necessity being the mother of invention is key to this. But we still have monopolies.
I would argue that.
No, we do not.
I would argue that
we don't have monopolies. I just want to clear this up real quick. No, we don't. We do not. We have corporations trying to buy up multiple ones, but they are competing with other ones similarly. The fact that I don't know, Frito-Lay owns Taco Bell and McDonald's or something is not a monopoly. It's not the same thing, because they're competing against another company that has Del Taco and Burger King. That's not monopolized. It isn't. You might say there are too few food processing companies. This is going to change all of that. yeah, there are like startups are now, I want to say like 60% of the new farms are interior startups, small companies, preparing food in these environments. So go ahead.
Yeah, and these things that we're talking about are part of that. The AI is accelerating the ability to open up, to get startups going. I mean, I'm using it myself to do it myself, right? But
Yep.
I was going to say that, in terms of China, I would argue that their entire investment in manufacturing was to create a value that they could then go trade for food, because they can't make their own food and they can't make their own energy. So they have to have something to go purchase that from or trade with it for
Right.
from somebody else. And so that's what the investment was for. And it
Yeah.
just so happened that a lot of the innovation came from the US and Europe, in terms of us sort of like allowing the sort of the mental stuff, the engineering, the sort of the creative stuff. We just basically outsourced it to them because we didn't want to spend the money and the time to think about it. And those are the things that are coming back and have to come back. And then once they come back, there needs to be effectively like an infrastructure to allow that stuff to be made.
Yeah.
And so my argument is going to continue to be, start with the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Like literally start with soap. And like what are the things you use every day? Like look at the things you use every day
and
start
localize
with
them. Yes.
Localize that. Exactly. Just like
and
food.
that would be in line with the like fresh fruit and vegetables and that kind of stuff. And labor. Most people don't know that most major cities have like a cattle ranch sized slaughterhouse nearby. New York certainly does. Chicago has multiple ones. They've got an entire processing setup, on the south side, that has been there forever. Sorry, somebody, Andrea just said, Rocky Horror 50th has gone AI and it is fantastic. She's saying this is because they're taking the
It's astounding. Time is
it's got a lot of
data.
Madness. Okay, so they made the one of these comparison videos. Oh, there's Tim. Yeah, that they do these kind of things all the time. It's adorable. By the way, Nerd Halen came out of the fact that in the live version of Rocky Horror, I played Brad at the Ultimate Jam Night on one of our Halloween shows, and Caleb saw me in the glasses and went, "Aha!" So, you think he'd do it, right? So, I gotta
start closing it up, pal.
I know you got to go. All right, I will. We're over time. Here's what I'm saying though, and we're going to keep pushing on this. Is that whatever it is, this is a robot build a house building robot, and that builds them out of wood, not just prefab concrete. This is the wooden part. Imagine these robots at a job site, measured out on a flat foundation, building a wooden house, just delivered. This is in a lab setting, but how far is it for a truck? A bunch of a few trucks show up and pap, there it is.
That's how they do it. They bring these basically these structural robots. They build the structure. The robot builds it. They take the robot structure down, and you get the structure.
Exactly right. Same thing with 3D. Okay, I'll let you go. But on that note, when you're to answer your thing about you're going to need energy and you're going to need food. Once the energy costs and the food costs go to zero, just gathering it becomes a digital thing. The state will kind of own it at one point and go, we still need a certain amount of gas, so we'll put some robots on it. We own the gas that's in the ground. We can make it stretch forever. Or you just need solar energy. So once you've got the panels, they're there. There'll be a new concept of the commons, all that kind of stuff, because it won't cost anything to get it. Now's the time to be a startup country. That's why Peter Thiel thinks he can convert, an island. That's what you'll see a bunch of those. But we'll talk about that next. Yeah. All right, Rob. Thank you for joining me today. It's a great conversation. I don't think that we're really seeing this conversation very much, except in little short-term, clickbaity articles that don't really go in depth into it. So I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. I love being here as much as we are every week, hopefully, but sometimes it's good. Thanks, chat. Thanks, Hal, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'll let you go. Hold on, let me sign you out properly so you can go on your own. All right, cheers. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Rob Glenn, Root Design, Chicago. My engineering nerd brother from another mother. And now I can shut this piece of software, and that worked. All right. Problem sort of solved. Hi, chat room. We'll bring you in real quick. So, one of the things that is clear to me is that the public conversation about a lot of these issues is often paralleled in the political discussion. So the politics of it will be determined by the kind of the conversation between consumers and other people, or fears or worries or interests or whatever. But it's the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that is really defining the value, worth, and circumstance of it. Think of it that this is like Rob and I are the CIA agents of AI and robotics and automation in terms of talking about what's really going on. If there's a conspiracy of silence and other stuff, it's largely based on your guys' interest and what you guys are being fed as the main storyline in these circumstances, like in terms of AI and what it's going to be used for and what it's going to do. And I have to say, that conversation has to change, or the concerning parts of it will be on us before we know it. We need robots now. Somebody needs to clean your house. I Chicago fan. Ichigo fan. Ichigo fan 04. Yeah, they're on their way, and they're on their way faster than people think. And they will be, the butlers of the middle class. Finally, all the things that only rich people had their entire life: a tutor for their child, a live-in butler, a maid, that kind of stuff. Like things that we all would like aspire to if you made a goal list, if you could do it without harming and you could provide for someone in the process. I'd love to have a live-in maid, that just has their own quarters and does all this. It's a great idea. You can understand how slavery happened. You know what I mean? Because a bunch of people were like, I like that so much, I insist, which is wrong. But that's where it came from, right? I don't want to do that shit. That's dangerous. That's boring. It's tiring. Simon Bird says money. Okay, that's exactly right. So how much would it cost to have a live-in butler that did all the things like in trading places? Somewhere between, and this is room and board being included, $80,000 to $100,000 for them to get up before you do, fix your breakfast, keep the house all day while you're gone at work, if indeed you do go to work, and then have dinner ready when you come home and pick up packages, do all that shit, right? $80,000 to $160,000 minimum a year for someone like that. And I would say as a living wage for what it's worth. I'm sure there are places where if you're like, I'll hire you, you can live in the house and I'll pay you $40,000 a year to spend on whatever you want, but your house and the food, you get to eat whatever you want from the fridge. You do the shopping, you do this, whatever, like that's the maid, right? Okay. So, I'm sure you could get a person like that on the cheap. It would just, I'm just speaking from what I think is honest work and the quality of, dedication from someone like that. Okay. Have the Epstein files been delivered yet? Not yet. We'll talk about those this afternoon. So that's impossible, right? For most people. You and I are not going to spend $80,000 to $160,000 a year. I'll do it myself, right? That's the choice we make in daily labor. That's not even the physical labor you do in your job for your own house. You think of all the time you spend cooking, preparing food, cleaning, and doing laundry. To find another human to do that and not outsource it to children's or your mate or whatever will cost you about $80,000 to $160,000 a year. The Neo Gamma, that cute little sweater wearing robot, this little 1X guy. Let's see if they have this. Hold on. Where is it? Okay, hold on. Let me show you. The one that There you go. This guy that this lady is taking a walk with, why do I have an overlap in my window? What is happening there? That's in my, it's got to be in my camera thing, isn't it? Oh, I know what that is. That's the shadow from my my mic thing. That's why. That's the, sorry. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just disappear for just a moment. Fine. Okay. That's better. All right. Now, and then I think this is the part wall over here. But this one right here, this creature, this robot, this vaguely Mandalorian looking kind of era robot, home robot. The target price all in for this thing, and I'm sure there'll be some sort of like software upgrade or some licensing or whatever, but you will buy it outright. And more than likely, it will have the ability, there's a bunch of them similar to this that will have their own, you can switch whatever OS. You don't have to get the operating system from the company. You can put whatever brain system you want into it. The target price when they initially talked about it was under $26,000, 20 to like 20 grand essentially. And just think about that for a second. $20,000, a starter car, and you allegedly have this little 1X robot walking around, and this guy right here is the head of the company. Bernd Bondik. I think he's from Finland. They've made several of these things over the years. Let's see if this is part of a long conversation he has. I don't know that they show it till later, or even if they do, but they're going to build 100,000 of their units by 2027, and still the price point will be lower. The demand for these things, they'll be sold out before they're made everywhere. That's what Tesla's counting on. That's what the figure guys are counting on. That's what the makers of Digit, I forget what their company name is, the one that's working in the Amazon factory, that's what they're counting on. Delivery upon delivery upon delivery. And then the robots make the robots, then they make the robots. Then it's about resources for a short amount of time, or reclaiming old resources, recycling things. You'll get your first recycle bot. That's on its way, but the price point is $20,000. Now, here's the other thing. Who says, everybody's like, $20,000 still is an expensive toy for the house and whatever. Okay, maybe so. How about this? How about you and I make a pledge right now? Okay, this will be a product for House Sparks Mega Worldwide and the Sparklers next year. That whichever one it is, whether it's a figure or a Neo Gamma or one of these, if they come out and you can get on a waiting list and buy one for $20,000, that what I want to do is I'll start a GoFundMe to buy one of these things and give it to Project Angel Food. How about that? That we could start gifting these things to Habitat for Humanity. Does anybody else think that's a great idea that I just came up with that I think is wonderful? Right? Right. So what I'll do is we'll start right now. We'll start on next week's show, and I'll do this with Rob because he's, again, our engineering buddy. We'll keep track of who's on par to do this. And I want to at some point set up a situation where I can interview the people from these companies as part of FRIED-A.I with Rob, and maybe even go to their places and do interviews. But the goal will be to pick one of these things, to crowdsource gifting one of these to a charity of our choice. I'm getting a little misty just thinking about this. Not kidding. And even if we get even if it costs, oh, is this from chat? Sorry. Subler asking about the robot you are making. Oh, I have two in place right now. One's the dog, which is a little funky because I have issues with, I need to reprint the entire body. It came with a metal body in this kind of kit that I was using that goes around a Raspberry Pi. And I don't, it's going to scrape the floor. I have to make new legs, right? So I'll show you guys that one. But I'm also working on a balancing robot. It still doesn't work, but we'll get there. And then hopefully what I can do is, the little cat cam that I have down here, I've been working on. That's why I've been adding buses to the things that I'll be able to show that thing rolling around on the floor. That's the other reason I'm putting all the wires up, is because there's going to be robots running around and they tend to get stuck on wires on the ground right now, the rolling ones, the little ones. So I love that idea. Okay, we'll definitely do this. But I think, let's see, sadly they'll likely need escorts to guard them if they wish to use them in the wild. No, here's what I think, CSL. This is what I think. Just let's say at Project Angel Food, they have a kitchen that needs to be cleaned every night. They need bathrooms cleaned. It's basically like a nighttime janitor. They don't have one insofar as I know. They have a cleaning crew that might come in, but to have one there that could clean all the surfaces overnight, and it doesn't have to even interact with people. It can just learn the environment. And again, this won't be until it's ready, but I think it's going to be ready a lot faster than people think. And a kitchen is a controlled environment where you could specifically give it very distinct rules about what it does and who it can, what time of the day it can do it with. But that's what I want to do. Once these work, could give them a free advertisement for helping a nonprofit that it really needs. Shit, yeah. I mean, ultimately, maybe we'll, by buying one of these things and implementing it, we get them to pilot gifting these, like a pair of socks. You know how they do those, like, companies like, for every pair of socks you buy, we give one to this thing. Well, why the fuck not, buddy? How about this? For every robot you sell to a customer in a home, you gift one to a charity. It might scare the cat. I agree. Well, there's no cat in the kitchen there, right? So yeah, so you free up people to do other stuff. I'm sure there's stuff it won't be able to do, like get up on a ladder and clean the light fixtures and stuff. You'll still have a cleaning crew that will have to come, maybe not as often, and it won't cost money. That's money that they have to pay out that could be going to making meals, which is the primary purpose. I think this is great. We got to come up with a Hal Sparks Robots Mega Worldwide or something. We're gonna have to come up with an idea for this, but I insist. And who knows, we could grow this into getting a 3D printing, a concrete 3D printer and gifting it to Habitat for Humanity, so they can start experimenting with printing low-cost housing and refugee housing. Come on. Someone can hack it and make it poison the food. No, they can't. In your office, I see. Yes. Well, that's for sure. Yeah, the little dog one, they're weird around Luna, or Luna rather. Bucky isn't afraid of anything, but Chip is very nervous. So I don't tend to use it when he's downstairs. I'll shut off Luna when he's coming down around. But I got to say, this is how we build the positive impacts of this. Because can you imagine an army of robot charity workers? I can. And imagine if your time was spent doing the heart part of cooking for the homeless and cooking for people who are, bedridden or at home with a terminal disease. Sparks cores. I like that. Yeah. The Hal Sparks RoboCore. Yeah. Just Robo Sparklers. That'll work too. But for real, let's do that. Well, I'm going to keep track. What I want to do? I want to create a little graph of who's ahead is probably figure one at this point. I'm going to guess, depending on what you want them to do. Although having a digit that takes the food from it's delivered from the truck and brings it in and puts it in the fridge might be a good digit thing. But I think having a figure one, which is again around the same price point, allegedly, even if it's more expensive, we could crowdfund getting a $60,000 or $80,000 one of them. I think that would be valuable in there, working all the time, helping them nonstop. I mean, it's a plus will help older people with lawns and stuff like that. They can't do Jimmy Carter AIs via habitat. I agree. This seems like yet another moment of Spark's genius. And I'm going to start recommending this all over the fucking place. That I want to start, I'm going to have to start reaching out to the heads of these companies going, my audience is going to crowdsource buying one of these things for a charity, and we're trying to decide which one would be better and when. Yeah, this is great. This is great stuff. I think this is it's a beautiful idea, right? Yeah. Eventually, the Sparks core units could assemble Sparks 3D printed homes. I'm for it, man. You guys have known. I pitched a show to HGTV in 2007 called Print This House. It was like a This Old House, but, variants on that about 3D printing an actual house. And we're going to do it. It's getting there. It's getting there quick. I think you're a tad ahead of the times. That's the point, though. K-Link. That's the point. You're absolutely right. They won't be ready at the end of this year. But if you're going to get one of the ones that will work, probably late next year, we're going to have to put money down on it or get in line to get one or convince them to set one aside to be purchased for this project, for this purpose. Right? Yeah, Boston Dynamics is brilliant. Absolutely. And those are big, expensive industrial ones. That would obviously be great. I think those are more towards the Habitat for Humanity idea. But what I will say is that I think we can, what we want to do is the ones that they're aiming towards consumers, we need to move them, if that's the goal, they're going to interact with human beings, not just be like another piece of gear on a job site. That's the one that would be safe to work in and amongst, the average, in a charity situation, in an environment where there's charity. So I'm going to get to work on that right away. I'll see you guys this afternoon. It is very inspiring. So much good that can be done. So much good. So let's just start doing it.
Couch humping, jumping, feel the beat, take it higher, can't retreat. Feel the rhythm, can't deny. Couch humping, reach the sky. Lose control, feel the fire. Oh yeah. Groovy steps, take it higher. Round and round, won't let go. Get wet, wild, let it show. Clap your hands, don't you stop. Let it build till we pop, pop, pop. Sweat's on fire, rhythm's tight.